His grandson's like, he goes by dude. Tell dude they're bombs. Kids are like all freaked out. Like, Dad, come home.
Where is he at right now? Is he in Poland?
Ukraine. Yeah, he went back. Back forward. Stay smart. I don't think he can read it. Normally, he would. He's got a big old gun safe. I told him his gun safe would be better off than with his than Pendleton right now. Yeah, couple. I'm not gonna vote yes on all of them.
I'm sticking with my conviction.
I've gotten to that point. I'm the same way.
You know the other thing that competition.
Whatever. I didn't know exactly what to put on his pipe. Is it all invested?
Yeah.
All invested? Okay.
Yeah. We can't.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So it automatically goes. Okay. Okay. He wasn't sure. I asked him.
Okay.
Straight into American funds, whatever. Yeah. I don't know. You can't time the market.
No, I mean, you can, and then there are some restrictions. And you can like
Just generally, when things are used to. Yeah, well, something
Still fast. They set it up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. About half of their school was good timing.
That's crazy.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah. Well, John, how many more weeks? How many more of these? In Canada? Huh?
Within May.
Yeah, no, I figured you know, I got this one.
The family
Probably
calendar.
2 or 3, maybe 2 or 3 more meetings.
Hey, are they giving those shirts away?
These?
Yeah.
I got like 4 of them,
Okay.
and I haven't bought a single one.
Okay. Well, I was hoping to get Amy.
Oh, from
I bet you're cracking a joke because they're.
I am. They're out of the tournament. Both the men and women.
Oh, yeah, now they're.
That's why.
Now I got it.
Yeah, they both are both out. 1 seed and a 2 seed.
I've never paid.
Tech's still for sale.
Somebody's giving me.
Yep.
We got. Man, that Purdue.
Hey, I knew that was.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think we were gonna be.
46
Yeah.
free throws.
500. 50 free throws. 40 something.
46 to 12. All right.
Oh, yeah. It was.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's 5:30. It's great to have you here this afternoon for the regular Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022 Belton City Council meeting. Today, the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States flag will be led by Councilmember Craig Pearson. The pledge to the Texas flag will be led by Amy Casey, City Clerk, and the invocation will be given by Mayor Pro Tem David K. Lee.
Join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
With me in prayer. Our most precious Heavenly Father, we come to you today to conduct the city's business, and we just pray that your wisdom would be here, and we pray that your peace would reign in this body. And we also pray that your peace would reign in this world, and we know that there's tensions, and we pray for all those that are in harm's way right now in Eastern Europe, and those that are helping, and those that are hurting. We just pray for them. And we also pray for all the leaders, including the leaders of Russia, that they would have wisdom, that you would guide and direct their paths such that they would withdraw and give peace a chance. And just again, thank you for loving us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is public comments. We have one that's not related to an agenda item. Sharice Bennett. How are you tonight? Please state your name and address just for the record, please, ma'am.
I'm Sharice Bennett with the Belton Police Foundation. Address is 99 Lake Road. Thank you all for having me. And I would like to invite you officially to the Belton Police Foundation Awards Banquet that we're going to be holding April 23rd. It's a night that we honor everybody that works at the police department as well as volunteers that help our department. And it will be held at 6 p.m. And that's a Saturday, right? Yes. Saturday, April 23rd. Our entertainment for the evening will be speaking Coach Fredenberg. Coincidentally. We will be giving awards out to honor everyone that worked so hard for us. And we will be having a silent auction for a fundraiser. So we would like to invite all of you. I'll give the invitations and RSVP cards to Amy.
Okay, would you repeat that date for us, please?
It's Saturday, April 23rd,
Location.
here at the Harris Center.
All right, thank you very much.
This includes a invitation for each of you plus one guest.
All right,
Thank you.
appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate what y'all do.
Thank you, sir.
Item 3 is one of the great things about being on the city council in a town like Belton, where you have people who greatly contribute to the life and the spirit of the community. And tonight, we're going to honor Coach Pete Fredenberg. And I'm coming down to read a proclamation in just a moment, but I just told him before the meeting, I remember about 25 years ago, came into my office and they were working out a deal with the school district to play football on Tiger Field. And I'm thinking to myself, a football team at a historical girls college is probably going to be a rough road to hoe. Well, obviously Pete was up to the challenge.
Yeah.
So I'm going to come down and read this proclamation, Pete, but we appreciate everything you've done for Belton, not just for the university.
Amen. Amen.
Whereas Pete Fredenberg has announced his retirement from coaching at the University of Mary Hardin-Baylor after 24 seasons with the program. And whereas Coach Fredenberg started the program in 1998, it took him just 4 seasons to take the crew to the NCAA Division III playoffs and just 5 years for him to guide UMHB to an American Southwest Conference championship. And whereas the crew amassed a 231-39 record during Coach Fredenberg's 24-year tenure, with undefeated ASC records in 13 of those seasons, and advanced to the NCAA postseason 17 times with 47 playoff wins, more than all other American Southwest Conference programs combined. Whereas the crew has been at least to the quarterfinal round of the playoffs in 12 seasons, with national titles in 2018 and 2021. Whereas Coach Fredenberg's honors include being named American Football Monthly Division III Coach of the Year, American Football Coaches Association Division III National Coach of the Year, American Southwest Conference Coach of the Year, and Division3Football.com Coach of the Year. And whereas Coach Fredenberg was elected to the Texas Sports Hall of Fame in 2017 and was officially inducted in April of 2018. And whereas Coach Fredenberg started the program from scratch and built it into a perennial national powerhouse, bringing national recognition to the University of Mary Hardin-Baylor and the city of Belton. Now, therefore, I, Wayne Carpenter, Mayor, on behalf of the City Council of the City of Belton, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022, as Pete Fredenberg Day in the city of Belton. And I encourage the citizens of Belton to join with me in congratulating Coach Fredenberg on his retirement and in wishing him well for the future. In witness thereof, I have set my hand and caused the official seal of the city of Belton to be affixed this 22nd day of March, 2022.
mind if I say a few remarks? Do I need to talk in the microphone? He just started talking about when I came to meet Wayne at his office, and the thought that ran through his mind was playing football at a girls' school. And I thought to myself, wow, well, that is quite an undertaking. But you know, the reality of it, and as I look back, and I've got 20/20 vision, always looking backwards, God had a plan. I didn't know it, didn't understand it. But when I came to talk to a D3 school that's just getting started, I had spent 17 years prior to that in a Division I program. And I thought I would stay here a couple of years, get my son stabilized, and then go back to Division I. That was 24 years ago. And it's just been a blessing. And so when I look back, I think, why in the world what did you want me to do? And God had a plan. It has flown by. And he knew exactly what he wanted me to do. And he wanted me to be in Belton, Texas, coaching at the Mary Hardin Baylor University and dealing with these youngsters. I'll never forget, I was in a temporary building. I'd been here about a week, and I had somebody ask me to speak to the Belton Lions just to give an idea of what we were going to do with their football program. I'd gone to the post office real quick, and a guy came up beside me and he said, "Do you realize you have a flat tire?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, I've got 5 minutes to get out to the Lions Club. And so, do you know where I can get a tire changed?" And he said, "Well, there's a station on Main Street and it's no longer there." But I drove to that station and I ran into the guy and I said, "Can you change a tire in 5 minutes?" And he said, "What's the rush?" And I said, "Well, I'm supposed to be out at Expo to speak to the Belton Lions Club and my tire is low." And he said, "No, I can't do it in 5 minutes. Just take my truck." My introduction to Belton, Texas, just take my truck and go do your deal and then come back and I'll have your tire changed. Well, you can be amazed at what a great choice it was to be in Belton, Texas. Cody, my son, who was a sophomore, really wanting to stabilize his life. There were a lot of people that were interested in him when they found out I was moving here because they wanted him to play football for them. And we went and visited with Jay Warwick and the guys at Belton High School. And Cody said, "This is where I want to go." So we'd been to several other schools. And I said, "Cody, they didn't win a game last year." He said, "I don't care. This is where I want to go." And it's been a real blessing. And this is a special deal for me. Thank you so much, Wayne. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
The mayor has allowed me to do a belated public comment. I want to thank our team that did such an amazing job last night during the storms of getting the warnings out in a very, very timely manner and the sirens all working. And I have had multiple citizens of our great city tell me how much they appreciate just how timely and accurate all that information was. And I know that doesn't happen by accident. So I just want to say thank you. It does not go unnoticed. It is appreciated. Appreciate y'all very much.
Certainly agree, Craig. And thank the Lord that we dodged those bullets, and prayers go out to those who've lost damage to their homes and businesses in the immediate area, all over the state for that matter. Items number 4 and 5 are on the consent agenda and may be adopted together unless a council member wishes to pull either one of those items. Item 4 is to consider the minutes of the March 8th, 2022 council meeting. Item 5 is to consider adopting the following resolutions for community development block grant CDBG related items for grant contract 722021 to replace water lines on Northeast Street and East Fifth Avenue. A, designated authorizing signatures signatories. B, appointing a labor standards officer. C, designated civil rights officer. And D, adopting and reaffirming federal rules and regulations.
Move to approve items 4 and 5 as presented. Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item 6 is in planning and zoning. Z 2208, to hold a public hearing and consider a zoning change from agricultural A to planned development, commercial 1 PD C1 district on approximately 15.836 acres located at 2406 Lake Road, FM 439, generally located west of FM 2271 and east of Sparta Road, to establish an RV park. Ms. Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, council members. Okay. As stated, here is the location of the proposed park. It is off of Lake Road. Here on the vicinity map, you can see the intersection of 2271, and this is just west of that area, right here. Okay, here's a zoomed in look at the property. As you can see, it is developed. It is currently a mobile home park, and it currently has about 12 to 14 mobile homes on site. This property is zoned agricultural. It was annexed into the city back in 1978 and assigned that zoning along with the surrounding properties. Nomads is over here just to the west of the site, and that's also zone ag. Properties to the west are zone ag. Properties to the east is zone single family 3, and just south of the lot, you have planned development single family 3 and planned development single family 1 residential. Across the street on Lake, it is a retail zoning with an SUP for a used car sales lot. The applicant submitted a zoning change from the ag zoning to planned development commercial 1 to allow for a commercial RV park, cabins, and amenities. This property is 15.836 acres. They're proposing 40 1 to 3 bedroom cabins, 51 RV lease spaces, office, clubhouse, boat rental, and outdoor amenities at the center. The proposed zoning change would allow for that use. We have to confirm with the commercial 1 requirements for minimum acreage and setbacks. Any other uses in the future will require an amendment to the PD if approved. Area and setback requirements, the lot exceeds the minimum requirement for the commercial 1 zoning area, which requires a 7,200 square foot lot, minimum width of 60 and a depth of 100. So here is the proposed development. To the front is where the clubhouse and parking and entrance to the site will be. Just to the west is where the boat rental will be. Most of this area is covered by two-way traffic. There's a one-way loop on the outer edges. The cabins will be between the roadway and the single-family residential uses. On the west side of the property is where the RV spaces are located at. And just to the south, here is the remainder of the park. Cabins, again, on the east side of development, and the RV leasing spaces on the west side of development. For RV parks, they must comply with the City Code of Ordinance, Chapter 19. With that, the minimum requirement for that is 1 acre lot. Again, this lot is over 15 acres. The density is 20 units per acre. What's currently proposed is 5.75 units per acre, similar to single family 3. The private roads that are in the development, they must meet a 20 feet minimum width. What's proposed is a 20-foot one-way and a 24-foot two-way road. Hard surfaces, concrete or asphalt is required. There is an open space requirement, 8% must be met. And the application exceeds that 8% requirement. Amenities include playground, picnic area, fishing pond, horseshoe, miniature golf, and dog parks. Again, with the RV requirements, there is a requirement for a 6-foot privacy fence. Water and wastewater connections must be made. There are existing water and wastewater connections available in this vicinity. RV site requirements are 1,500 square feet with a width of 30 feet wide, and they're showing that in the plans. Parking is 1.2 parking spaces. What's being proposed is 2 parking spaces per site, additional parking for boat, and just general uses available throughout the site as well. Adequate refuse trash services, 1 is required within 300 feet of each site. They're proposing 6 throughout the location. There's adequate restroom and shower that meets our requirements. Showers are 1 per 30 sites. Toilets, I believe, are 1 per 20 sites. And they're showing that throughout the development. Also, the cabins are equipped with shower room and restroom facilities. So that area meets that requirement. With the plan development, we're also looking at the proposed materials proposed for the development. For the clubhouse, they're proposing stucco exterior with the stone wainscot at the bottom. And for the cabins, it's going to be hardy plank material, composition roofing. The future land use map identifies this general area for residential use. However, most of Lake Road is bank transitional. Notices were sent out to property owners within 200 feet of the property, and we received 7 letters of protest and then 2 letters of support. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item at their meeting on March 15th, and they voted 4-3 to disapprove the requested zoning change. The applicant submitted a letter to appeal that decision. With that, a supermajority vote is required to approve this request. Staff recommends approval of the request. However, we do not take issues with the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation as well. With that, I just want to point out the applicants are here. I believe the engineer Zoe Grant will be presenting, and Mr. Sharma is also here should you have any questions. That concludes my presentations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Moore. This time we'll open the public hearing to discuss the possible zoning change. And I have several folks signed up to speak to this issue. Tony Gallagher. Yes, sir. If you would state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Tony Gallagher, 510 Marshall Drive, Belton, Texas. I'm here. I work with Sharma on this project, so I can answer some of the questions that y'all may have either now or later. There's a lot of time that's been put into this, and I've been to the current trailer park that's there. And over the years, he has been, through attrition, eliminating a lot of the trailers that have been there for years and condemning them and hauling them off. So this project's been kind of in the works for many years. So that's why it's being brought now, because he's got it to that stage where he's spent the time and money to have it professionally designed for quality development. I know there's some concerns here from people, and I'm not saying that their concerns aren't legitimate, but we would like to address them, and we don't want anything to go into Belton that's not going to be taken care of. We all love the city, and I think that this development would be great here for a lot of reasons. And you'll probably hear them several times tonight: traveling nurses, baseball teams, fishing tournaments. Smaller families that come to town can go stay in a cabin instead of staying in a hotel on the highway. We don't have enough hotels around here. People typically that come to Belton stay in Temple, Slato, Killeen. There just isn't enough around here and options for a nice RV park. There's some in the area. They're not close to the lake. So this is another option with very good amenities that I think will attract a very good clientele. So.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher.
Thank
you. Jason Williams.
Jason Williams, 6373 Eagle Point Main Street, Belton, Texas. Business partner of Sharma's, also as a franchisee and for about 20 years. And Sharma and I have been talking about this for 4 or 5 years as well. And I just wanted to say some of the benefits that I think this brings. Destination point, Belton's become a destination point. This is going to be a higher end RV park. As you guys, I think you've seen the plans. Charlotte would like for this to be our first franchise location of many. And we've been following quite a few of the different RV parks, and they're just doing extremely well up and down 35 corridor. But we're talking about one that's got the security gates and the nice pool and the nice track and the nice dog park and the nice cabins. And this is a higher end demographic. Belton's very family. This is a family thing. You've got the demographics of children and parents. You've got the grandparents with their kids. Again, like they said, you've got the nurses and the professionals as well. I think some of the concerns might be that, excuse me, some of these RV parks they don't have rules, they don't have standards, they can put whatever they want to out by their camper. There's not time limits. With ours, there is. That you can't stay there for a certain amount of time. You can't, you've got to it's got to stay nice, clean, and uniformed. I think also one of the concerns was what happens as far as upkeep and turnover goes. Our goal for this is this to be the mothership of our franchise, how we go out and do them. So it's gonna be very important that we run this one well, it looks right, and that we present a very nice product. Again, I hope you guys consider this. I think it's perfect. It's in a great location. I think it'll look great for Belton. And if there's any way that we can tie anything with Belton or history or anything we can do to make this more better for everybody, we think it's a good option for families. We think Belton's exactly that. So we thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Zoe Grant.
Good evening. Zoe Grant, 510 East Avenue J, Temple, Texas. I am the designer of the plan. If we can put that up real quick. It's currently a 50-unit mobile home park, grandfathered in. The design is to have that long entrance, so there's no stacking on the street of Lake Road. This will not be a concrete jungle. Plenty of green space. We plan on preserving the trees that are currently there. That's why it's called Shady Meadows, and so we want to preserve that. The design was made it to be acceptable with the surroundings, with the residents. Cabins are placed on one side where the residents are, so that you don't have a lot of that motor vehicle traffic next to the residences. The owner decided to keep the number of spaces and cabins low. He's not out there to make a lot of money, but to make a very nice resort area. He assures that all the rules and regulations concerning sights and sounds would be taken care of when we're ready to go forward. Plenty of green space, as mentioned, amenities, fishing, dog park, everything for the whole family so they can all come. Screening on all sides of the property except for that commercial part that leads to the gas station. Again, adequate spacing between all the units as per guidance from the Belton team here. Attraction to the travel nurses, as mentioned, they need a safe, secure environment to be in, and that we will have that with security, lights, cameras, all of the bells and whistles. Job opportunities. We can bring in more job opportunities within the area. Business revenue. It's a resort style attraction. More business to local restaurants, gas stations, real estate. And the very good news is that the trailer park would be going away. Am I still in my 3 minutes? It's a good place for the troops that have short notice, relaxed environment, so they can come here and enjoy a good time. And those who are staycationing, sometimes you can't go out of state, but you can bring your family in and have them stay at this park, and then they can all enjoy the amenities that we have there. Again, it's a great opportunity for Belton, and we look forward to moving forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Mr. Sharma?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Piyush Sharma. Address is 2502 Lake Road, Belton, Texas. I'm the owner for this property. So my priority for this project, first of all, I'm a citizen of Belton. So I will promise Belton that anything I do it will be on a best position only and best way only. That's why this concept is there as a resort style. It's not a regular RV park or a cabin rental place where you can just hop in and go around and come back. It will require security gate to check post to get in. And this is everything is going to be website designed. So we will have a background check, the price range, everything. So whoever will come and visit, they will be on a proper manner of RV also, and cabins are also on a high end. So it is not for anyone and everyone to get in. We have the system made there that we will check their background first and get them in. And as I say, I will look for the Belton first. So what is the best for Belton? And I think this is the thing best. And I'm here to hear from our citizens also. If there is anything they want me to change, and I'm there that I can modify also. So that's all about it.
Is your residence 2502 Lake Road, or is that your business?
That's
address?
my business. My
Where's
residence
the
is
residence? I think that-
1060 Crescent Drive, not
Okay.
Belton,
Okay,
Texas.
thank you. Yeah. Thank
So I'm a resident of Belton.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, sir. We have Cherie Ilse. Is that correct?
Sherry, Milty.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's spelled that way, but my mother pronounced it Sherry, so. You're right. 1605 Sandbar Circle. So I'm going to be one of the homes that is at the tail end of this. So I will have the RVs, I believe, at my side. That was my concern, is a lot of noise coming in for those. My other issue was, the lights that are going to come. I mean, granted, I know he says he's going to try to keep all the trees that he can, but granted, there's going to be some that will go, and there's going to be a lot of light posts that go up for this. My other concern, which he kind of addressed a little bit, was that long-term stay. Do we know who these people are? Do they have any background that we need to know about? Which he did say he was going to do background checks, which we did not know that earlier. Because this is my backyard with my kids right here, the fence is going to be right there. We wanted to make sure that there weren't any sex offenders that are going to come in and live there long term. Because they don't have to, probably, I know they're supposed to.
Yes, ma'am. Could you round it up?
I didn't restart. My
Oh,
bad.
I'm sorry. I thought that went back pretty quickly.
Really quick.
2 more minutes. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I lost my train of thought. Oh, just, if we had any sex offenders or child molesters, living there that wouldn't necessarily give their address because it's not necessarily they're the residents, but it's just their home for the time being. My other concern is the 439 entrance. That's a 55 miles per hour zone right there, 2-lane. Trying to get RVs out at 55 miles per hour is not ideal. That's my piece on it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Kelsey, VTech.
Hello, 1603 Sandbar Circle. So I too also back up to the back edge of this development. And I really just kind of wanted to start off and just applaud the developer and the designer and all those that spent their time and effort in designing this. I think it's a fantastic plan. I just think it's in the wrong location. There are a multitude of families that have direct back access from their backyards directly to this. I frequent campsites like this. We bring our families to campsites like this, and I know the value that's there in them. I just think it's in the wrong location. There's one egress point on a 55-mile-an-hour road with no shoulder and no turn lane. All of the cabins back up to residential fences. The lighting that's going to have to take place there. There's a dog park. So is there sound ordinances? Are there curfews? Are there background checks? Are they sex offenders? Are they registering? I mean, I know there's a lot of elements that go into this and a lot of variables. And again, I think it's a fantastic plan. I just think if you take this plan and put it in an area that doesn't back up to 20 plus, 30 plus homes of taxpayers that have value as well, from a land ownership standpoint, I just think it's poorly placed. I am all for development. I'm in the construction industry myself. I see the value in this. I just don't think it's properly placed the way that it backs up to all these residential homes. Our backyards, our kids are there right at that fence line. And I understand that trees will be saved. Parks will be in place, lakes will be in place, but the sound, the traffic, the noise, the light, everything, all these variables that go into it will directly affect every single homeowner that's on that street. So I'm in opposition of it.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all that has signed up to speak. So at this time, we will close the public hearing and allow council to discuss it. And I would remind folks that since P and Z rejected the zoning change, it would require a vote of 6 council members to overturn that. Having said that, we'll open it up for council discussion.
I thought the last comment was a good comment. It's a quality development. Given its location, maybe not the best location. In 1960, after the lake was built and Frank's was out there and as a time to come out and kind of go out in the country, then that would have been a great time to have something like this. But the current, I think it's just the right development, wrong location.
I have a couple questions for Chief. What are the requirements on, this comment was made a lot at the P and Z on the recording that I listened to and then here. What's the requirement for sex offenders traveling in RVs? Just curious.
For one thing, it depends on the severity of it's all the condition of their release, severity of the crime. They are required to register with the police department, and then of course their names are published publicly on the website. The most severe ones, actually, we do a publication in the newspaper and all too. They can currently live there now in the trailer park.
Well, I'm looking at this from purely a zoning perspective. In my opinion, I mean, you have an RV park or a potential for an RV park right by the lake. RV parks, I mean, they're popping up everywhere these days, and I've seen some really quality RV parks that don't even come close to the amenities and the way they're wanting to make this nice. So, I mean, I know people that live in RV parks temporarily while they're building a house or whatever. That's becoming very, very common. And RV people staying in RVs off and on is becoming much, much more common. And there's not a lot of quality RV parks in the area, and there's definitely not by the lake like this. So from a place standpoint, being right by the lake, I mean, that's a pretty big amenity that you're adding to the lake, not to mention what you're doing away with in order to get this. I mean, he could very easily just put some more mobile homes on that lot like are there with very little investment and just keep up more of the same, which I would think everybody in this room would prefer this over what's there. This seems to me like would actually be a plus and an amenity and a benefit to the community and a need being met that's not currently being met and being met in a quality way. So from just a zoning standpoint, I mean, it is appropriate land use for this item. And I drove in there Saturday, and I could get pretty excited about replacing what's there with this. And it looks like he's even trying to lay it out in a way to impact the houses next to it in the least amount of way, and not having the RVs on the side with the houses. So it looks like he's trying to be sensitive to the neighbors and with screening and some rules and some internal policing there. I think it can work, but bigger than that, it's just it's appropriate land use. It's not an inappropriate land use for that spot. And if we, I understand we have these meetings and we've all been doing this a pretty good while, and we've seen lots of developments that were quality and a benefit to the city, but the people that lived right next door to them weren't very excited about it. And so you kind of have to weigh the benefit to the community versus the people that are right there. I mean, if we took that into consideration completely on every single thing we did, we wouldn't have an HEB where it is right now. Because there was people that were pretty opposed to putting that HEB there, the people that bordered HEB's property. So while we're sensitive to that and we want to make it as quality as possible, I think from a zoning perspective, this is more than appropriate.
Oftentimes I wish zoning could go with ownership, and I can understand your commitment to a quality project, the amenities you want to add, but that's not the case. And if we rezone this for RVs and cabins and it changed hands, we may not have the commitment and the dedication and the want and desire to make this a quality facility. It may be turned into a profit center, and long-term rentals become an issue. And so there's a lot that weighs on me personally to make this decision, because we do want development. I do want what's best for Belton, but we've have had some issues with RV parks and long-term rentals and permanent structures being built and school buses stopping at the front door to pick up children because that's where they live. I think density is a concern I have. We're putting 91 units in there. And I do understand that it could sure go back to 50 mobile homes. And so what is the better of those two? I'm having a hard time with. And I focus on zoning and what could happen to that property, especially if that property changes hands. And how would the new owner treat that, or a non-resident owner? What happens there? And so concerned about that aspect of it, and the continued residential development out that way.
Right on those comments, in aspect to the zoning, if we change to commercial and it changes hands or plans change, there could essentially industrial could go in there, correct?
Well, this is a PD zoning, so any future uses proposed will
This
need
is
to come
still
through
today's.
another amendment through council.
But there is no requirement for a pool, and there is no requirement for excess green space. It could increase density. We hear a commitment, and boy, I love hearing that. It's wonderful. But there's no guarantee from our standpoint that happens if we change zoning.
Is that built into the PD?
That is part of the PD, hasn't complied with the PD site plan if approved. Also, there are requirements in the city code of ordinance for RV parks. There's a 8% open space requirements.
Which they exceeded,
Which they exceeded at this point. Yes, sir.
and density they exceeded as well.
Yes, sir. There's density is 20 units per an acre, and they're at 5.75.
Any concern about water and sewer?
There is current city water at the site, and with the construction of the adjacent subdivision, there was a sewer sub out available for them to connect to at the site.
Just another point of clarification with the PD. Can the PD be structured in a way that requires to build what they're saying they're going to build?
That is the requirement for the PD site plan. It will be attached with the zoning to say that that is what is going to be required as we're reviewing the site plan, that it has to comply with the site plan that's submitted in.
Okay.
Would you address the concerns about light and noise pollution and the feasibility of higher fences than the 6 foot that's proposed, please?
Correct. The code does allow up to 8 feet tall for privacy fences. So the applicant could choose to do that, or the city council could also make that recommendation as part of the PD requirements. Lights will have to meet the city standards. We don't allow light trespassing, so it has to be shielded in a way that is protecting the adjacent residential area. So it has to be directed away from the residential area. Also, there's a question about the length of stay. The city code of ordinance does have a area in there that says they cannot exceed 90 days per calendar year.
And who enforces that?
That would be us and code enforcement.
The PD.
Yes, sir, the PD. Well, the adopted codes is already in place for the length of stay, if that's what you mean, and for the design of it, the PD would regulate that.
Enforcement.
The enforcement would be police and city planning.
That's difficult.
That is sometimes.
So do we get like roles? Do we get the roles of who is there on a regular basis?
No.
No.
No,
Okay,
we would not.
okay. So
Chief, any
it's
comments
self-reported.
on long-term stay enforcement at an RV park?
No win. It's a no
Sorry.
win.
It would not be PD, it would be the code compliance section of PD, but probably not police officers unless they need a backup. Currently, it's an impossible, it's like parking. You have to have somebody almost doing it full-time, chalking tires to make sure they moved and did they come back immediately. It'd be a daunting task to task somebody with it. So it's more of it's an honor system. Could it be done? Yes, but it would take some personnel dedicated to just that. We don't currently collect rolls at any of the other RV parks. So it's a challenging thing that can be done, but it would take personnel to do it. Just because of the turnover.
Are you aware of any RV parks that are in fact violating the 90 days?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, wouldn't we want to, this one are the ones that are in violation right now. If it's a problem or presenting a problem or presenting a quality problem or a visual problem or whatever, and we see that problem, then we would use the ordinance and the PD to then, not police department, but the zoning. We would use that to then enforce to solve the problem.
Absolutely.
So it's not necessarily something you would have an officer patrolling all RV parks and chalking tires. It would be more so if we notice the police, other people that are driving through notice it's becoming an issue at this location, then you go do something about it.
That's correct. We use all tools in our tool bag when we have a nuisance type property. We're currently doing that with some properties elsewhere, and this would be no different to use code compliance and any statutes that we have, whether local or otherwise. It's similar to the traffic code. Texas traffic code is about yay thick. Most of us couldn't drive very far down the road without violating something in it. But enforcing every statute in it on everybody is just daunting.
But I would
Not
say,
possible.
I would encourage city staff, police, if we have a problem at another RV park currently, whether this passes or not, if we have a problem, then we ought to go address it.
We do. We're currently working on the mobile home parks in that manner. There's some active stuff going on right now with that. Matter of fact, we visited with, we've been out this mobile home park many times and gotten some cooperation on some changes and things along those lines.
Is my understanding correct that if this does not pass, that the conditions there will remain the same as a result of being grandfathered?
Yes, sir. What is currently there is grandfather. It's been grandfathered since it was annexed in 78. So yes, sir.
Okay. And so the conditions that exist can remain in perpetuity. Is that correct?
It can, but the applicant can also chooses to improve upon that. Better water and wastewater connection. What's currently allowed is up to 50 mobile homes. It was what was originally approved. So
And how many is that, did you say?
50 mobile
50,
homes, and it's
okay.
currently has
Mhm.
about 12, I believe. There was been some cleanup effort.
Okay, so one of our considerations is, would this be an improvement to current conditions, or do we want to perpetuate what's there? Okay, thank you.
Well, okay, so to follow that up, is this a change in ownership?
It's not changing ownership.
So we expect the same owner to do something different tomorrow than they were doing yesterday.
Well, it doesn't have 50 anymore. It has 12 to 14 because he's working towards this to get rid of all those to do this. I don't know how long he's owned it, but I mean, he's been working on this plan for several years. You don't just run all those people out overnight. So without seeing the actual timeline and history of when did you buy it?
So
and
when,
what have you
about how
done?
long, about how long have you owned this property?
Please come up to the front.
Thanks again. As we start with the coach, so God has a plan for the Belton and for me for this project. Now, asking how long I've been here. I've been here 16 plus years, and I own this mobile home park 16 years plus. When I bought it, it was fully packed with 50 homes and 3 RVs. And from first day only, I had a vision that this is the prime property for this kind of business. So to kick any tenant out is not good. First of all, you taking their place out. And as a good human being, what I did, slowly, I find them not paying or any default. Slowly in 16 years journey, they are gone. So now only 12 left. And they also are on month-to-month basis. So this proposal is there, and it's in my vision from a long time. So long story short, I've been here doing this business 16 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, back to the first statement that I made very quickly. Typically RVs are, I mean, think about Lake Travis and a lot of RV parks that were out that way. You know, when it was the exterior of residences, you know, you'd had to travel 20 minutes out, whatever, 22 or 620, or come out 439. You went pretty far past residences where you got the RV parks and the camps. But now it's core. I mean, it's I mean, Temple wraps around the lake. Belton is wrapping around the lake. This is core residential area. It's no longer on the outskirts. And so again, I think it's a quality development. I think it would be great. But in the core of, it's really in the middle of a subdivision that wraps all the way around it. And so I just does not align from the zoning standpoint. So, and honestly, it's, if it has to pass 6-1 to have spoken against it, I don't know how much more discussion we need.
Okay, any other comments or discussions? And I agree with what Mr. Lee just said. I think it's well designed and well laid out. I feel like that it's in the wrong place. And those folks who are trying to improve the property, I appreciate that very much. Given the homeowners and their long-term investment in their homes back there, I hope that it will continue to improve, but I'm not personally in favor of that size of the park in that location, despite the fact that I think it's well designed. It's location, I'm afraid, which is what Mr. Lee has just said. If there's no further discussion, I would ask for a motion.
I'll do it. I move that we approve the request.
We have a
So
motion
now
to approve.
I'll let y'all vote me down.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the request. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those. 3 ayes. All those opposed? Aye. The motion to change the zoning is not passed.
Consistent with P and Z.
Item number 7. And again, we do appreciate the effort put into this.
Thank you, guys.
I think its location, again, I don't want to repeat myself, but that is the primary concern. Item 7 is to hold a public hearing and consider a zoning change from agricultural to single-family SF1 residential district on approximately 10.362 acres located at the southeast intersection of Elm Grove Spur and Capitol Way, generally east of Interstate 35 and south of Elm Grove Spur. And Ms. Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor,
Room cleared out.
I'll have to recuse myself on this item.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pearson.
All right, the room cleared out. Just want to point out the applicant is here. Joshua Pearson is the applicant for the zoning change.
Is there a relation?
That's what your dad said.
All right, the location of this property, it is east of I-30. Sorry, I somehow took off the pointer. Okay, it is east of I-35 and it is on the, on the southeast corner of Capitol Way and Elm Grove Spur. Here's a zoomed in look at that property. As you can see, this is currently undeveloped vacant land. The zoning, this is the outer edges of the city, the eastern borders of the city. Some of the areas, the white areas are unincorporated city limits, but that area is developed with detached single-family homes. Across the street is zoned agricultural, just north of the property, and that's also developed with a detached single-family residential. On the west side of the property are some light industrial zoning area, and that area is developed. Also some commercial too, and some other commercial uses along the southern part of the property. This area was annexed into the city limits in 2016 and assigned the ag zoning at that time. The applicant recently submitted a subdivision plat that proposes 22 residential lots. 15 of those lots are 3-acre plus lots, and 7 of those lots, which are the lots in this question for zoning change, are 1+ acre. The 7 lots require a single family 1 zoning district. The plat is currently under review and will be brought back to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council for approvals. The allowable land use would allow for what is being proposed, which is detached single family homes. What the area requirements are for single family 1 is a 10,000 square foot lot with a width of 70 and a depth of 100 feet. So here is a proposed subdivision plat. The lots and the subject lots are the ones that border Elm Grove Loop or Elm Grove Spur. The rest of the proposed subdivision are ag lots. For case summary, there are no city water or sewer, and this might sound odd because there was an extension down there. However, this is outside of the city water CCN. This is within the Armstrong Water District. So the applicant must comply with their requirements. There are fire hydrants off of Capitol Way, but there will not be any in this proposed development. So therefore, a fire suppression system will be required for proposed new residents. The applicant is also proposing on-site sewage systems, which has to be approved by the Bell County Health Department. And there's a reason for that because the sewer taps out over there. There's additional requirements for that.
So could you pause a second? It says it may require fire suppression. I know a lot of homes that are built out in the county, unincorporated areas. I don't know of anyone that puts a fire suppression in a residence. Is this a may or what does this mean?
It means that this is not in the ETJ requirements and the city has not provided a variance for any properties in the city limits that does not have fire protection in the subdivision.
So it's a may.
So it's
okay.
May.
I've just never heard of fire suppression in private residences that weren't like multifamily.
Right.
Okay.
The future land use map identifies this general area for low density residential. So the proposed zoning change does meet that qualification. Notices were sent out to all property owners within 200 feet of the property. We did receive 1 letter in opposition and 1 letter pretty much just advertising that there is a light industrial zoning district that's nearby, and to just warn the applicant that residential neighborhoods, if there's any concerns about noise and so forth, that those issues should be considered prior to development. So with that, the Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item at their meeting on March 15th, and they voted to recommend approval of this zoning change. Staff concurs with their recommendation. And again, I would just want to point out the applicant is here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. If I can't, I will turn it over to the applicant. Thank you much.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll open the public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak for or against this item? If not.
Got at least one.
I'll speak, Mayor, if you don't mind. Josh Pearson, my address is 6575 FM 439 Belton. To that issue, Armstrong Water doesn't have fire flow. They don't have the pressure needed to support that. And so since we're in Armstrong CCN, we have to get our water from Armstrong. So we did some research and figured out there are residential fire suppression systems. And so as part of our covenants and restrictions in the subdivision, we would require any single family to have a residential system. Cost about $1 a foot, uses the same water lines as residential homes would use. So there's no additional requirement for them to beef up water lines, spend a bunch extra money. And we would probably, depending, we would potentially offset that based off the cost of the lot or based off the cost of the home, that type of thing to help cover that. It was just kind of one of those, we couldn't get it, but we really wanted to have it. And talking to a bunch of the fire marshals around, they actually prefer the in-home because they're life-saving versus structure saving. And so we think it's a really good option to provide there. So
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions anybody's got.
John, can I ask you a quick question? Did you see the little memo or letter from Todd Mance? Can you comment to that and his concerns about?
So I believe he's got the steel manufacturing company that is to the northwest of this. They just added on a little bit further north of that up Capitol Way. There are some single family homes already here on Elm Grove Spur. And as you can tell, we've got quite a bit of perimeter trees, especially on that corner lot. I think it's probably his primary concern. And so, and it is an 1.5 acre lot. So it's not something that has to be right up there on the road. In fact, probably most of the homes would be a little bit further back into the lots there. And so if that is a concern for that, particularly that corner lot, they've got some trees and some shielding, I guess, that they could utilize. And then they could also go a little bit further back off of that main street. There was one other one that was concerned a little bit about Elm Grove Spur. We do have to do some perimeter road improvements as a requirement. And so we plan to do that. We've got that booked into our plan, both there and on Capitol Way.
Well, I think that person's concern is probably he's foreseeing these people buying these houses and then the week after they move in, going across the street and complaining that there's a bunch of noise.
Sure.
So, that seems silly, but we've seen it time and time again where people buy a home and they're not aware of what's going to happen around them or what's going to be happening. So I think his point there is due diligence, and
sure,
when you're selling that house, maybe say, you are on the edge of a.
Yeah, and their entrance into this area would go right by both of those establishments. They'd all be new construction homes. So definitely something that would be talked about.
Yeah.
Especially for that northwestern corner.
Thank you, Josh. Anyone else in the public hearing wish to speak for or against this item? If not, we'll close the public hearing and open it up again for council discussion.
My question is thoroughfare plan. Doesn't something on there, this comes pretty close to thoroughfare plan if I remember correctly, correct?
That is correct. So Capitol Way is a minor collector. Also, there is the Shanklin Loop, outer loop that will come to the southern tip of this property. Apologize, I have to get that map up really quickly. So that will come along the southern tip of that. That will also be a requirement for a right-of-way dedication.
I move we approve agenda item number 7 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 7. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Pearson. And if you will tell the other Mr. Pearson he can come back to work. There he is. Right on cue. Thank you very much. Item 8. Z 2210 to hold a public hearing to consider a zoning change from agricultural A to single family 3 SF3 residential district on approximately 97.413 acres located at 1000 East Avenue H, generally east of Interstate 35 on the north side of East Avenue H and south of Nolan Creek, generally referred to as Griggs Hill.
I think that last part was added.
I believe it was. Ms. Moore.
Thank you. As stated, this property is east of I-35. Here is Avenue H, and it is just runs north and south of Avenue H. Nolan Creek is just north of this property as well. So here's a zoomed in look. As you can see, this property is developed with one little house in the middle. For the zoning, this is currently zoned agricultural. The properties north are also zoned agricultural. Also on the other northwest of the site is zoned commercial highway, but some of that is developed with single family detached homes. On the other side are some agricultural lots and also another commercial highway where the Crossville Church is. South of this lot is zoned multifamily, and that's where the Bell Oaks apartments are. And then just east of the site are high-end industrial zone properties. The applicant is proposing this rezoning to allow for single-family detached residential lots. He's provided a conceptual plan that shows 224 detached single-family units. Here it is. Here is that site plan. As you can see, there are some proposed roads. Most of that is off of East Avenue H, and there is a dashed line that shows a connection to Central, and also a gated entrance off of where the that connects to Shady Lane where the Bell Oaks apartments are. So we'll come back to that in a minute. Okay, for the land use, the proposed zoning change would allow for the detached homes. The lot that is shown on the conceptual plan exceeds the requirements for the single family 3. The requirements for that are 5,000 square foot lots. It's proposing 6,000 square foot lots on the conceptual plans. The width of the lot is 50 and the depth of the lot is 90 for our requirements. And on the conceptual plans, they have a 50-foot lot width and 120 feet depth. Traffic impact analysis. With our zoning application, there was a worksheet submitted in that just kind of provided a general summary of what is to be expected from the development. For that, the average daily traffic would be over 2,184. The development exceeds our 100 dwelling unit requirements and also our 1,000 average daily traffic requirements that was recently adopted. So it does require traffic impact analysis. Also, as part of our subdivision requirements, 3 access is required for development that exceed 101 lots. So I am going to jump back to the conceptual site plan. As you can see, with this development, the developer is not actually proposing that connection. And with this other development connection to Shady Lane, that is only proposed for an emergency connection for emergency vehicle. So that truly leaves just one entrance into the subdivision, which is East Avenue H. So that has staff a little concerned at this point. For the future land use map, it shows this area for residential, single family 1, 2, or 3 development. So the requested zoning is compatible with the future land use map. Notices were sent out to all property owners within 200 feet of the property. We received 1 letter of support for the zoning, and we also received 1 letter commenting about rental houses and duplexes, but this development really is not doing any of that. With that, the Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item at their meeting on the 15th, and they recommended approval of the zoning change. While the single family 3's zoning is consistent with the comp plan, Rezoning may be a little premature at this time until the traffic situation is figured out. With that, that concludes my presentation. I want to point out the applicants are here. Mike Avery's is here and also Mr. Graves is here. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. If I can, I will turn it over to the applicant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tina. At this time, we would open the public hearing for anyone who wishes to speak for or against this proposal. Hearing none, we close the public hearing and open it up for council discussion.
So I think, just jumping in, I think it's a really good development. It's a beautiful piece of property, has some great views, some of the best views in Belton if you've ever been up there. Not illegally, of course. So. 'Cause I know it's private property. So, but that being said, 2,142 with one entrance, I think that's a challenge. Could you show that that showed the dotted line out central?
Yes, sir.
So I think that's the key. And this is the thing, is like, which comes first? Like for zoning, if the requirements are 3 and it only shows 1, then it doesn't even meet the city requirements. So I don't think it meets the requirements of the zoning without at least access to that. Now, how much of that is, because some of that is real road, right? So some of that dotted line is not a fake road. I mean, that's a real road that goes to some point.
Correct.
And then that's,
I want to say there's just the intersection and a little bit of the.
well, I think it comes all the way out. Like if you're coming out to the police department
Oh, right here.
property,
I'm
it
sorry.
comes out to at least an L. Yeah, somewhere in there. So we just have to get over we need to work with the applicant to find a way that they can secure access. So who owns the creek? Because since this is not a whatever, the Leon River, right, is you own to the line, but Nolan Creek, you own to the center of the creek. And so somebody owns on the other side of that creek and anyway, is there a way to secure? Because if they had secured the right of way, like owning the land, even though the bridge isn't built, then you could zone it. But if they don't even own the land, it's landlocked. So do we know? No. Okay.
Our long-term plan is an extension and a connection of that road, essentially extending Spring Street directly across Nolan Creek. Right now, you've got the jog of Central Avenue going into the development. That is a long-term plan. We're working on funding for that, but that's certainly not something that's been achieved at this particular point in time.
Can you, Mr. Listy, can you point that out with Mark? So we can kind of see what you're referring to exactly.
We're talking about
That's one of the
Spring
street.
Street.
Here's central. Here's central. That's connection.
See enough of it on here to show you basically. This is the conceptual alignment basically going back. You can see the the range in this particular area. Yeah, the range is here. And so
yeah, we don't see anything.
We can't see it. Jim.
Oh, okay.
It won't allow you to do that one. It's zoomed in. I apologize. Let's see if we can try something else.
Can you just point with the pointer?
Just the old fashioned point and shoot.
Just point with the pointer, Sam.
Okay, so there's like if we use our imagination, there's an S and there's a portion that's straight. So the top part of the S next to Taco Bell and going to the straight portion would be the alignment. And then they would have to, the tail of the S. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
And
Okay.
then here is.
Right. There we go. Okay. Can you blow this up a little bit?
Let's see.
Okay. Great. Okay. So here's the range. This is what the street does right now. going across the creek. And what our plan would be to try to straighten that out essentially and go straight across Nolan Creek. It would provide the ideal connection if this works. There are some intervening properties, which we don't control all the properties, so there'd be some right-of-way acquisition. This is an expensive project. It's one that we have costed out and have a proposal for some federal funds in place right now. It's about a $6.5 million project to do the whole thing. But we would need participation by a number of property owners in the area to try to make that a reality. We recognize the constraints on the property owner, but at the same time, we can't assure the connection at this particular point in time. We can't tell you it's a done deal. Applicant has put a lot of effort into the project and trying to come up with a land use. And as you say, it's a beautiful piece of property. It's something that really should be developed. And we like the idea of the residential, single family residential in the area. I think it would be a great development in this vicinity. But the access is critical, and we really have got to figure out how to make that happen before anything. Would not encourage any investment, particularly at this particular point in time, of building streets and utilities and other things until we can address this situation. And we believe it's a partnership. It's not just a city responsibility to be done by others, by us. Certainly the applicant has some obligation and responsibility here as well. We've also talked about the location connecting to the area around the apartment project. That's another possible access out. But again, the property owner would have to work with other properties, the apartment owner, in order to get access out to 436 to Holland Road. That's another discussion that we've had that would provide a distribution of the traffic in the southern area. There's been no apparent effort to achieve that as a secondary access. Again, this site needs 3 accesses. This is perhaps more in control of the property owner than the street crossing Nolan Creek. And so we just simply need to see more evidence of providing the access necessary to make the subdivision work.
So how many residences can be on a piece of property for a single exit?
Yeah, 50 and
50.
50 in the subdivision ordinance.
So is there a way that we could allow for a phased development to allow for the first 50, right, to go forward? And then then when we secure the second one, well, then you can do the next, 100 or 50. And then when we get the third, we can do the rest. I mean, is there a way that we could do that as a phased development? And we would probably have to phase the zoning, right? Because, or I don't know, I'm just thinking.
Sure. The portion along Avenue H, you can see has about 50 units in those first 3 cul-de-sacs. And so that might be a possibility. What we'd like to look at, though, is the constraint of Avenue H. Avenue H is right now just a local street. It has a little bit more width than a normal 31-foot street. So if there's long-term plan of using that as a major access out of the development, into and out of the development, then we might need to look at some additional right-of-way or widening or something there. But your idea has merit. A zoning limited to just that first portion to provide for the 50 lots, 50 residential. Was there 50 lots there? Is that what's proposed?
It's like 27.
27 units. 50.
Sam, couldn't you also zone it and then you just wouldn't plat the rest of it? So, I mean, the rest of that would come with platting and you wouldn't plat any of the phase 2, 3, whatever. You wouldn't plat it until you had access determined, because that's part of the platting.
That would be a possibility.
Process.
It certainly implies some zoning rights, and that is consistent with the plan, but it does imply some zoning rights that really depend on some additional access before it can be actualized.
Yeah, because you wouldn't plat it.
Right.
If you didn't have the right access. Even if he sold the rest of it and it was zoned single family, it couldn't be platted until those issues were resolved.
You'd have to specify that condition. You would have to establish that as a condition.
For platting?
Yes. The limitation on platting on anything future.
Is there indeed a limitation on zoning, Bill? My understanding was that
Once it's single family one, it's single family one for all the acres.
But they can't do anything with it is my point. You can't build
That's the planning.
without planning.
Do we need to phase the
But the
zoning, or
memory-
We just need to phase the planning.
Yeah, so the memory of where do you do that goes into the specificity, thank you, specificity of the, right? If there's no ordinances, there's nothing in there. If you got that, the single family, it's single family one, we would have to be specific. So we would really need to bring forward, yeah, it's the dominoes.
I guess maybe I'm just not making sense, or maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about, but if you zoned it all, you platted that first phase. If it came back to plat a second or third phase and you did not have adequate access at that point, then you would not plat it.
Unless, yeah, and that's where it has to be specified in that platting.
But I'm saying regardless of any of this, we would not plat it for the same reason we're not just approving it all to do the whole
Yeah,
thing
but
right now.
but we is going to be a different we in the future. The we that is seeing this in 15 years, if nothing happens for 15 years, just for the sake of argument, nobody remembers that we did this unless they went back and read the minutes.
It gets a little tricky to try
I mean,
to
I'm
carry
not
out that.
against the clarification,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying if it's 100 lots requires 3 access points,
Yeah.
that's not going to change, but it doesn't hurt to clarify that. I mean, it may not matter anyway. They may not want to do that. So
It gets tricky over time to try to ensure that that's carried out. I certainly understand the intent right now, but trying to make sure that that's carried out over time is, we want to be sure we can carry that forward. We recognize this is an overall development plan. Perhaps the development plan would be different if they're never successful in getting the 3 accesses. They might want to do something completely different on the site. And so zoning the whole thing without that resolved is a little problematic.
I think it's going to be a quality project, and I'd love to see that property developed because I've been there legally. Mostly anyway. But we've had this discussion with the developer from the get-go that we need more access for this many homes. And I can't see, as much as I want that property developed, I can't see voting for it when we're talking about one access. It doesn't meet our goals, and I don't think it's the safest thing for our people. We're seeing wildfires and other natural disasters these days. There could be an emergency exit, but that's a lot of homes. It's a lot of folks to get out in a hurry with one primary entrance and exit.
Well, I just used my calculator here and said if there's 2142, I'm just taking the number 2142, and let's say we can get one car out every 15 seconds, just like clockwork. Didn't have to stop at a stop sign 15 seconds. And then we have, that's 4 cars a minute. There's 60 cars, 60 minutes in an hour. It would take 9 hours for people to get in or out of this property if that's the true number. I'm just saying 9 hours to get
And
in
it's
and
a
out.
one-way access.
That's with one-way access.
One-way access on
One
interstate
way,
frontage.
and which is not, it's not,
It's not
that's
ideal. It's
untenable
not.
in a city.
Well, if you say it's every 5 seconds, it's still 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nose to tail.
Yeah.
And if it's an emergency, it's not going to flow that smoothly anyway.
I think the point is it doesn't meet our requirement.
Yeah. So, but I again, I'm very much for it. And I think if we as a city need to spend some money on Avenue H, and we as a city need to help, I mean, we both win if we can get a better bridge for the police department. I think we're all for it. Yeah. I think we have. I'm sorry, we're no longer public hearing. Sorry.
Again, that's my big concern, the safety and the one exit. And that we've talked about that since the project was proposed, that we needed more entrance and exits. So, any other comments?
Well, I'm all for it. I would be willing to table it to allow the city to work with the applicant to get a zoned, or a phased approach to this so they can continue to go forward as we look at other ways to help make this happen. But I don't, so I would move that we would postpone this to the next meeting. Is that fast enough or slow enough? 2 meetings? Okay, I would just move that we postpone this to a future meeting.
Second. Okay, we have a motion to postpone, table this item for a future consideration. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. So that item is tabled for future discussion. And hopefully we can work out something.
Would it be appropriate for me to ask one quick question?
Yes, sir.
I'm seeing something, Pastor, and this may be really silly because topographically I'm a little limited here. But I see something that says that there's an internal nature trail that comes along the north and sort of east and goes, I think, into the parking lot and circles around and does stuff like that. Our Assemblies of God Church, is that correct? Where that little blue line that I think is being called an internal nature trail,
Actually, I believe that's the limits of the 100-year floodplain.
that's just okay. So it's not really okay.
That's when Nolan Creek takes all your backyard stuff and washes it down the river.
Okay. Okay. So the little blue line that goes right smack dab through the Assembly of God Trail, the building, sanctuary is the floodplain?
That's correct.
Are
Yeah,
you the floodplain, brother? Cool.
Do you remember that last time when it flooded? They had water up in there.
You guys get more fun than anybody. Okay. Anyway, I was looking at potential other, because if we were to bring all of these homes into your parking lot, that'd be really cool, brother. That would be cool.
Any other comments, Mr. Kirkley?
No, sir, I'm done. Thank you.
Item 9 is to hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance amending section 38 of the zoning ordinance sign regulations to allow changeable copy message signs by right in certain zoning districts along Interstate Highway 35 and Interstate Highway 14. Mr. Van Til.
Mayor, Council, thank you very much. Our goal of this project is to allow changeable copy signs by right that have frontage on I-35 and 14. And currently, these these kind of signs are not allowed by right. They require a specific use permit. Just a quick background, this came up when the church applied for a changeable message sign. And when it came to the council, it was, back in January, was denied. And we received some direction from the council to go forward to kind of explore how we might be able to allow these by right along the interstate highways. As a reminder for y'all, back in 2016, you might remember this, there was an amendment to the sign ordinance that allowed taller signs along Interstate 35 from Corey Road to just southwest of Central Road. And that was, and I put that in there just so that you would see that there was some thinking along those same lines. But these signs have now been included in the electronics sign requirements as well. So we have put together the proposal. It consists of 6 amendments to accomplish our goal, and I'll go through those one by one. And if you have any questions, of course, well, I'll try to answer those questions. So the first one relates to the definitions of a changeable copy message center. We changed the definition from center to sign. We changed from automatically to electronically. And then we also added the condition relating to 3815, and that's going to be a key criteria that I ask you to keep in mind as we go through this, because that identifies many of the criteria that was articulated with the last zoning change. The second change proposed is on table 1. There are 2 tables in the sign ordinance, table 1 and table 2. One relates to the locations of the sign and the other to the size, the height, the face sign, things like that. So on table 1, we identified zoning districts that would allow for signs with electronic changeable copy. And then we also provided the approval types that are in there. If you see section C, whether that's approved or should be permitted, allowed, SUP, things like that. And then we removed the PD from the table because we felt like, well, if you wanted to do a project and you wanted to include a certain type of sign, you would include it in the PD if you wanted to, if there are other extenuating circumstances that you wanted to include. So this is a picture of, see table 1. You can see the PD is removed there. This is the new criteria. And you could see that the electronic changeable message sign now has a P, where in the past, under the other criteria, it is now or was an SUP. So these signs where the SUP is, these are signs that may want to have an SUP that are in other parts of towns besides along the major highways. Okay. The third amendment is the addition of section 3815D that I mentioned earlier. And just a quick recap of those things. Y'all have seen these before. They basically give some technical parameters relating to how the sign is displayed. And, when the day passes, you have these ambient illumination that it automatically dims, that kind of thing, flashing or blinking, or the intensity, the brilliance that causes glare is not permitted. We have some timing in between the images and so on and so forth. So that is section 3515D. And we refer to that a lot because those criteria come into play as the signs go through the permitting process. Table 2 is the table where we identify the height and the size and things like that. And so we've added those electronic message signs to the particular zoning districts that are existing in the ordinance. We also see references to the 2016 ordinance a couple of times, and we added the changeable message sign criteria to those as well, since they're along the highway. And here we have a copy of table 2. You can see that we've added the electronic message sign criteria to that. Here's the 16 ordinance again. And we have several different zoning ordinances, zoning categories. So we have different pages within that particular table. So we have the retail neighborhood services and things like that. On the 2016 amendments, we added the electronic changeable message signs. Again, you can see the 3815 over there, which relates to all the illumination and those kind of criteria. The last one is commercial highway. Again, here's the new requirements. Let me go back and just touch on something very quickly. The 2016 ordinance allows for a 75-foot tall up to. The same size is in the face sign, that is, the height of the sign on other areas outside of the Corey Street, Center Street area that goes back to 2016, they'll be 20 feet tall. Well, that's the way they are today anyway. Okay, so this is 2016, so you see 75 feet. See where I'm going with that? And so here's the new stuff on the commercial highway again. Here's the 3815 again. And so you have the 225 and 20 on the height there. So 225, the maximum face sign, and 20 feet is tall. That's table 2, right? So we got all those pieces in there for table 2. And then the 6th change is essentially changing US 190 to Highway 114. We felt that's pretty good time to do that. So, and then we've included a map that shows essentially the areas that the different types of sign areas. I think intuitively that's pretty clear. What I wanted to point out on this particular slide is that it's, it's not a zoning, it's not a zoning map. We do have the distinction between the Corey area and the central area. And then, of course, everywhere else in town, which would identify those by right signs, to allow the electronic signs like that. What it also shows us is that in other areas of town, like the Loop area, 93 Main Street, that kind of stuff, all these areas still require the SUP, because based on the conversations that I recall from the council a few weeks ago or a few months ago, that there was concerns. We didn't want to just kind of open up, be too permissive and things like that. So hopefully we're getting really close to what you all are expecting. And so we did conduct a public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission back in early part of March 15th. We had a public hearing, no public input during the public meeting. They recommended approval of the proposed amendments. One of the commissioners also suggested that we added all the text dot regulations, all the text dot sign regulations into the amendments. However, when we got to talking this out, we discovered that all the text dot stuff is really more applicable outside of town. They don't have any authority within the community. So even though, I wanted to honor the recommendation that the commissioner made, but then also state that it's not applicable in this particular case. So at this point in time, I recommend that we hold the public hearing, and then if you all agree, after the public hearing and some discussion, that you all approve the recommended amendments to the sign ordinance. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Van Zyl, for the background on this. I know we were all concerned when Crossroads made the application earlier, because we really hadn't studied the situation, and this clarifies it greatly. So at this time, I'd open the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to speak for or against this item?
Matt Thrasher, the pastor at Crossroads Church, 7746 Fox Road here in Belton. Thank you for your time and your consideration. And we want to be very clear. We want to be great partners with our community. We want something that the city can be proud of. We have done our due diligence with the company that we have chosen. They're American made. They're out of Houston. They've been in business a very long time. Everything that zoning and planning has asked from the prior meeting, the sign already meets. Obviously, this company does this, all over the state and all over the U.S. TxDOT, as was pointed out, where we are, as long as we're out of their right of way, there's no rules or ordinances, I guess, for our particular use, which I believe is called an on-premise sign. Off-premise signs, which are like billboards that are not on the property you own, that is something they regulate. So again, the light pollution that was brought up last time, everything that the photo cell, it's a 360-degree photo cell, so it adjusts automatically with clouds coming in if there's a storm during the day and so forth. And we're going to adhere to the 10-second time change and no flashing. Again, we've been in the community 83 years. I've been the pastor there 13 years. We want to continue to be good partners with the city. Again, something that our city can be proud of, our people can be proud of. And we're over 1,000 member church, and we believe we have a great product to offer. We want people on I-35 to know that. Thank you for your time. And if you have any questions on it.
Thank you, Reverend Thrasher. Appreciate your coming. I'll close the public hearing unless there's anyone else who wishes to speak for or against this. If not, we'll close the public hearing and open it up for council discussion.
I don't remember why, but I was pretty involved with the 2016 sign amendment and ordinance review and modification. Got a lot of heat over that. And I remember one of the key points was that we wanted to maintain the status of a scenic city, and that there were certain detractors for doing that, and whatever we could do to maintain that status and that designation we wanted to maintain. And we've been dealt with Napa, and I mean everybody has kind of had a little riff about our sign ordinance in the past, and I feel like we have it kind of right. And I'm not sure that I'm ready to go all fully digital on I-35 or I-14 just yet, personally. I thought we had a pretty good ordinance. We had some reasoning for doing that. And that just kind of my personal thoughts, to be honest.
Sure. The scenic cities designation is something that, we worked hard to get, and they essentially look for you to have reasoned standards. And that change we made in 16 came about after a number of ZBA cases, zoning board of adjustment cases for height in the area around the low area of I-35 right there, Corey and in that vicinity.
But the city also committed to monument signs and.
Yes, we have a real
neon
strong
and brightness
yeah,
and a
monument
lot of
ordinance.
things
And
in that.
Again, what you have before you is just something for you to consider. We felt like there was some direction to maybe go in this direction. For standardization, if it feels too permissive, if it's too broad, then we certainly can take another look at things. We're certainly not trying to hold up the church, but they are kind of held up in this situation as we evaluate a change. We certainly agree that they should not be located in all locations, Main Street and the Loop and interior locations.
Please know it has absolutely nothing to do with the church. It's a
understand.
digital sign that we're
Right,
changing the ordinance for our city.
It is a little hard to know what the impact is going to be, how much they'd be taken advantage of, or people would use those in the areas that have been authorized. So I think it's really a judgment call for the council how far to go. Limited on I-35 and I-14 was the way we kind of approached it, but it is permissive in the sense that it would be allowed by right in any of those locations. So someone could come in with a permit, as long as they could meet all these standards, they would be allowed without any further review by P&Z or council. So trying to find that balance of authority and opportunity for signage without burdening P&Z and council with every request coming to you. That's where we're trying to find the sweet spot in that area.
Well, I think too, I think when we first came up with this sign ordinance back when, it's been quite a while ago.
Before digital.
That's the point I was fixing to make. I think this sign ordinance, and you can tell by the language, is a little antiquated, and it's not even really addressing digital. It's not that we were against digital at the time. It's just that it didn't really exist, or it didn't exist to the standard it is right now. And some of the stuff that would have been available then would be more problematic than some of the digital that there is right now. I mean, the digital now today is pretty high quality, and it's not a big flashy neon offensive sign that it once used to be. So I think if you're not careful, you're kind of futilely resisting modern technology, because I prefer like just the billboards. I mean, some of the billboards on 35, they're not offensive and bright and in your face. They're pretty subtle, and it's a pretty streamlined modern kind of messaging. So I mean, I'm not anti-digital sign, because I think they've really come a long way, but I think the clarification you've done here to narrow it down to certain areas, 35, 14, and even on 14, you can't have a big, huge, tall sign. You can't put a big billboard, digital billboard necessarily. It's still got to meet the sign requirement as far as size. It's just this particular spot, you're going to get that height because of where it is. So, I mean, I don't think it's a problem.
So there's several things that came into it. Part of it was what we're calling the changeable copy message sign, but also just whatever neon light signs, right? So there's one in downtown Belton with the theater, and there's another one on North Main Street with a theater that basically had to go through an ordinance process to get a variance because of the lights. You could argue whether that's appropriate or not appropriate, but I think going through the process is appropriate, because what we're talking about here is really aesthetic, and aesthetic is, and not to bring up Supreme Court, even though that seems to be pertinent these days. I think that on another issue, they said that they can't really define whatever this bad word is. It's not a bad word. It's just referencing negative content. Is they can't define what it is, but they know it when they see it, right? And so aesthetic, you know what's tasteful or not tasteful when you see it. And so to allow for changeable copy message signs by right then allows, there's no longer a hurdle. If you are in these zones, you automatically get that. And I think that if we want to maintain a scenic city, I think to Sam's point, we need to have reasonable standards around it. And just because you have a desire to put a sign up, you shouldn't have it by right if we want to maintain the scenic city. So my problem is not necessarily digital signs, because I think, now gas stations, instead of having to send somebody out there and they have to change the thing, they can actually flip a switch and say it's this dollars versus that dollars. They keep going up, and I hope they stop. But I think that's appropriate. I was talking to Sam and Wayne about this before. Honestly, from San Antonio to Dallas, I can think of maybe 2 or 3 digital signs that I can actually remember content on them. There are a couple of digital changeable signs in the city of Belton. I would be hard pressed to say what any of them said. And so if this is really meant to impact personal choices and opinions, usually it's memorable. I think an Aerosmith concert or a Disney on Ice is the last digital sign I remember. And it was in the Frank Irwin Center in Austin, right? I remember those things. But I can't remember most. So I think that most digital signs, it's the intent of communicating a message. I don't know that it's the most effective communication tool. Just a changeable sign, I can't remember. Anyway, but I think it's aesthetic, and I think allowing it by right removes a reasonable hurdle for whatever council sits at that time to say, that's appropriate or that's not.
Other comments? So this would allow anyone who met those requirements to put up a sign anywhere along I-35 or I-14.
If they fronted the highway, yes, sir. Okay. It would be by right. So they wouldn't have to go through a particular public process like an SUP or a PD, something like that. And again, we thought this was the direction that you guys wanted us to go in. So, but then again, the important thing is that we do what you feel is most appropriate. We put together something that we felt was appropriate, but we want to make sure that you're comfortable with it and that you do what you want, or that you think is best appropriate for this town.
When it's aesthetic, it's a hard thing, right? Because everybody's going to have a different point of view, and it's okay. It's okay for different people to have different points of view, and that's why we have governance the way it is.
I agree.
I agree with Mr. Lee's comments. The aesthetics, McDonald's on Adams, you can't even read it. The contrasting colors. We have McDonald's on the highway. I'd hate to by right let them put a 5x3 sign up that you can't even read anyway. I think that plays into it. Your sign's only as good as your graphic designer. And
some are good.
Some are good, some are
Yeah.
bad. My question, I guess my specific question is, if this fails, where does that leave the church who's here in question? Now the third time?
Because of the way it's
and I
written,
think we all agree
can't
that
address the church because we're only.
This is just the ordinance. It has
No, I
nothing to
just
do
want
with
to know
application.
what
Yeah.
their next
I
step
think we were
is.
talking about that today. I believe the church request was actually disapproved as opposed to being tabled.
They would need to reapply
Well, could they?
if they
We'll have
wanted
to come
to.
back.
Can you, what's the alternative, I guess, because I think what David's saying is SUP. He wants a mechanism that it can still come through council.
We could, one option might be, if you like the general criteria that we've structured for Crossroads, that Tina and Bob have pulled together, those could be incorporated into the ordinance as the standards for an SUP. Then you're just looking at location and the characteristics of the sign. So you could craft something slightly revised of what we, rather than being by right, you could still retain the SUP. Or you could just leave it. The problem with just leaving it ad hoc for every situation is you're subject to criticism.
Well, for me, it would be easy. Gas stations with I remember those. Like I can remember probably 14 digital signs that have the gas prices because they're like $3.94, $30. Yeah, I'm shopping
For
every day,
gas,
right? So I can remember those. So I would personally just limit digital signage to gas stations at this point, and we change it in the future. But that's one person's opinion who wants more aesthetic, right? And some people, it's not that big a deal.
But we can't legislate effectiveness of the sign.
No, I'm just,
It's
I'm,
the
I, no, I'm not
investors.
legislating. No, I'm just
It's
saying
the
I'm just
investors.
defining my aesthetic.
It's the investor's opinion on whether it's worth it. Like the McDonald's example, if they're allowed to have it, it's their decision if they want to spend the money to put that sign up that may not do anything for them. But, you know, I think there's situations, at the very least, there's situations where it's appropriate. So, you know, I don't know why you couldn't do that. Just tweak the language to where they're allowed as an SUP if they meet
And
the
I think that's the
criteria.
challenge. I think that's the challenge. I think if we were to all write down what was appropriate, we would all write down something slightly different.
Well, I'm just trying to find a middle ground because I think I'm okay with them, period. I mean, I'm okay with how you wrote this and I appreciate doing the work that we told you to do.
No problem.
But I'm just trying to say, is there a middle ground here? Because we need to have a sign ordinance and we need to have a sign ordinance that we can all agree on. And if we're basing this sign ordinance on each and every one of ours opinions on digital signs in certain areas, then we may not ever even get a sign ordinance amended.
One suggestion might be if you want to, certain parts of it and you like the 3815D, that's amendment number 4. You could consider that and leave the rest of it out. And then you still have the SUP option. You just have these criteria that the SUP has to meet. That's
And
one option.
it seems to me that we've reached this place because we had a request from Crossroads Church for a sign. And I think, it's my opinion that we were fairly unanimous in our desire to create that as a positive thing for our brothers and sisters in Christ at Crossroads. And so that my number one thought was, let's do something like that work. Number two is, if this works for us and it can be changed to some degree so that it's not abused, then I'm in favor of that. You guys have worked really hard on this and you've done an excellent job. I'm very much in favor of it. I also understand how it could be abused. And I grew up when there were lots and lots and lots of gasoline sign stations along the way that sort of kept you from seeing the pretty things that make you a scenic city. But what can we do to expedite the signage for
I like what
Crossroads?
Bob just said. You just do away with all of it but this and this particular 3815 and keep it an SUP.
Would that work for Crossroads?
Would existing Lamar signs be eligible by right?
They'd be off premise. This is for on premise.
On premise.
So Lamar would be off premise. That would be a separate ordinance. Yeah.
And it would still be the 225 square feet would be the criteria.
Yes.
So I'm literally going to play devil's advocate here. If we give them the right to do it, they can put up any sign. Do we have any method or a tool to monitor the images they display? Not the church is probably going to be images that are okay, but I'm just saying, if we give anybody the right, what's to stop them from putting up stuff that
TVMA?
No, we don't.
Now,
Yeah.
it is intended to be on-premise advertising. So
Right.
it should be advertising the church or a gas station or gas price. It can't be advertising something for sale elsewhere. So it's not an off-premise sign.
Mhm.
So it has to be something off-site, but content, or you're talking about First Amendment stuff, and
Yeah.
that's pretty challenging, but it should be it should be on-premise advertising, services and sales and products available on site.
Well, I don't disagree with what David said earlier about keeping some control of what people can do and not just giving it by right, because that could get a little out of control. But what you're saying here, Bob, with this leaving it SUP and the changeable copy message sign meets this criteria, kind of solves that problem. And then you just decide, if it's okay in that spot for that purpose.
Just be a
And I don't
location
think
issue.
we're having these people beating down the door over these signs. If it becomes a burden on staff because we all of a sudden get all these applicants and it becomes an issue, then we readdress it.
And so the current ordinance, if we did nothing, right? The current ordinance is broader than this, and anyone in any area of the city can apply for a digital sign. This actually takes a step towards a narrower definition. So if we were to do this along with SUP instead of by right, then that would be a reasonable hurdle to jump. And then we can all figure out if we like rainbows or don't like rainbows and whether we're going to vote for it or not, right? So, but yeah, okay.
And
Well,
that's,
it gets
isn't
its
that what you
criteria
said?
on there, Dave, too.
Yeah,
David,
no, I know. That's
very
what
specific.
I agree. I think the only
Quality.
thing we need to throw out is the by right and go back to the stuff. I think the rest of this is good stuff. I mean, it helps define.
Yep.
So let's do that. And then let's
Guy,
get Crossroads back to you whenever they're ready.
Guy, you sketched that out. Would you like to make that in form of a motion?
Well, Bob sketched it out, but I think the motion would be to leave the ordinance as is and change
No.
Proposed.
not as proposed,
I'm sorry.
leave it as is with the SUP part. This is
No,
the only thing that would
ordinance
change.
already has SUP. The
Correct,
existing
yes.
ordinance as is doesn't need any action. This is,
You'd be
motion-
adding this one right here. That's all you would do.
The motion is this be added as an amendment, this 3815. To what exists.
Let us draft it and come back to you.
Yeah.
I don't think we can approve it tonight. I think what you're trying to say is
That's what we just,
SUP with these criteria on I-35 and I-14.
yes,
Yes.
true that. Yes.
Okay.
I thought
Yep.
that's
In
what
the-
I just said. but-
In-
So
in-
I'd move that we postpone this to a future meeting to allow the city to draft the appropriate.
I think we can do it by
thing.
next meeting, so we don't have to re-advertise. That's pretty simple change. And then we'll be working with Crossroads within that context and try to get them back before y'all just as quick as possible.
And maybe we need Crossroads to be a separate item so that even if we get hung up again, we've still got the option to approve Crossroads so they can get on with their sign. Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion to postpone this until
That's fine.
April 12th, until April 12th, and we'll fine tune it and move forward at that point in time. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
John seconded.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye. I think everyone said aye, so the
Aye.
motion passes unanimously.
Anonymously.
And again, Bob, thank you for your work on that. I think narrowing it down to I-35 and I-14 helps, and we have fans of those signs and we have those who don't. Like David said, it's okay if we aesthetics
either
are, was it Mr. Justice Black that said, I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see
That's
it.
the one I was going to say, but I didn't say that one word.
I think that's what he said.
TVPG.
Yeah, okay. So item 10, to hold a public hearing regarding a strategic partnership agreement with River Farm Municipal Utility District of Bell County. Mr. Listy.
Thanks, Mayor, members of the council. This is the first of two public hearings to consider this item. As you recall, the River Farms development was approved by the council, January of 2021 now, almost a little over a year ago now. The municipal utility district was a component of that approval, and we anticipate a little under 2,000 homes on this site. They're actively working. They've actually submitted us a site plan just this week, a preliminary concept plan on the development.
And they have more than one exit out of this.
They do actually. To Toll Bridge Road, which will be improved substantially as a result. So yeah, we're looking forward to working with them on that. You may remember this as a component of the overall approval. Strategic Partnership Agreement has to do with the city's ultimate annexation of the property. The MUD board was required to hold 2 public hearings. They did that in December of 2021 and January of 2022. They approved the agreement that you have before you, basically. The provisions are that the district and the city agree that the city may annex any commercial property for limited purposes of collecting sales and use taxes. There is no commercial property proposed right now, and so that could still develop, but there's nothing anticipated at this time. They're still proposing all residential development in the site. The second one is probably the key. The district consents to full purpose annexation of the district on or after the earlier of one of 2 time periods, basically, when 90% of the acres of the land in the district have been developed with utility and road facilities, and the district has issued bonds for all those improvements, or 30 years from the effective date of the agreement. So if they go really fast, develop the thing in 15 years, the city could consider annexation at that particular point in time, but no later than 30 years, and certainly when 90% of the bonds are issued. The MUD board, the developer, and all the future property owners will agree to these terms as a result in order to accommodate future annexation if the council wants to annex it at that particular point in time, at one of those triggers. They would waive all rights to oppose future annexation as a result. Y'all are familiar with the site. The area in red along the river is the portion that's inside the city limits now. The other portion adjacent to Toll Bridge Road is outside the city limits. You may also recall that the city agreed to de-annex the area along the river when they meet some obligations having to do with Toll Bridge Road. So the ultimate plan is for an out-of-city MUD to be developed. They certainly want to take full advantage of the out-of-city opportunities there. But the plan, the Strategic Partnership Agreement, gives us the right to annex the property fully into the city under those terms. So we recommend that you conduct a public hearing, take no action today. We have scheduled and advertised a second public hearing at your April 12th meeting, at which time the Strategic Partnership Agreement may be approved and its execution authorized. So I'll take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Listy. At this time, I'll open the public hearing if anyone wishes to discuss the Strategic Partnership Agreement with River Farms MUD. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing, and then we'll hear again from you on this on April 12th, correct? All right. Item number 11, to consider a resolution allocating funding received from the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, a part of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, to certain projects in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency. Mr. Rogers.
Good evening, Mayor. This is the last agenda item for tonight. I thought I'd start off on a good note, right? Okay, so on February the 8th, staff proposed kind of a spending plan for our art money. During that meeting, City Council provided some alternatives and suggestions for funding levels. So we've made some changes to that spending plan that I'll explain to you tonight. We originally included $800,000 for utility relief for City of Belton utility customers. That number was just $100 bill credit flat for every customer that we have. In the revised plan, we've lowered that to $400,000, and we would use those funds in kind of 2 ways. We would take $100,000 and essentially pay off the delinquent balances for those customers that are behind 1 month or more. Essentially, those are the ones that need the relief, right? And then we would use the remaining money, around $300,000, to establish a broader assistance program, probably through the United Way, for Belton residents. But it would be, what we would envision is for not just City of Belton utilities, but all utilities, electric bills and things like that, to provide some relief to the community. We do wish to expand or maintain nonprofit food distribution programs. So in fact, we would increase funding from the original number of $100,000 to $300,000 to increase that effort. On the economic development side, we originally had $250,000 to establish a small business grant program that would be similar to the way we did our CARES Act grant money. Those that applied could be offered relief just for their whatever purpose. But in the revised number, we've increased that to $850,000 for really a more targeted small business program. One that the applicant would have to show there was some impact from COVID. They'd have to provide a budget on how they're going to use those funds. And then they'd have to provide receipts for expenditures of how they're using those funds before they would be reimbursed afterwards. Originally, we had $300,000 for hoteliers. In the revised plan, we decided to roll that money into the small business grant program and just to let the hoteliers apply like all of the other small businesses. Neighborhood investment. We originally had $1,500,000 for the historic Standpipe Park project. What we've done is lowered that from $1.5 million to $900,000, but we've added specifically a line item in this for rehabilitation of the historical Mount Zion Methodist Church. We have $500,000 budgeted there for that project. On the infrastructure side, some significant things here. The dollar amounts are basically the same. We originally had that plan for kind of water and sewer infrastructure, but because we're going to show this as a revenue replacement for the city, because we have the ability to do that, we can use that $1 million for street projects, not water and sewer. So the recommendation is to make that switch, essentially using that $1 million for street projects, maintenance, things like that. Two projects here did not change from the previous version. We still plan to use $1.2 million to implement our compensation study and $500,000 to upgrade our water metering infrastructure as well. So those things don't change. Total is still $5.6 million for art money. So where we are tonight is a proposed resolution to basically officially allocate funding for these sources. The resolution also allows the city manager some leeway in how to make this happen, work with some entities and creating programs and things like that. But what we would do if we needed to redirect funding from one project to another, or if we have money available as we get closer to the end, we would come back to council for any kind of reallocation of those funds. That's staff's recommendation to approve, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
We'll mention we also met with Stephanie O'Banion, future council member, but currently still with United Way, of course, and discussed the program participation that United Way could facilitate. She's very agreeable to that, and we'll be bringing back an agreement of some kind to the council to help us implement that component. I've also discussed with your Ryan Nelson at Central Texas Council of Government the ability to facilitate our business grant program. It's going to have some additional parameters that we did not have last time, but other communities that they administered in the past had more enumerated standards, basically, and they're certainly comfortable in implementing that for us as well.
I'm a little hesitant on the water meter, the 500,000 for the water meters.
Mhm.
I think we might want to delay that commitment until after. Don't we have an upcoming water study or water rate study or
Water sewer master plan, right?
We have both those things kind of starting. The utility rate study is nearing its end. And then the master plan, I think we're ready to kick off here soon. That's certainly something we could do if council wants to kind of scrap that item. I could do that.
You're going to have to replace those anyway.
We have,
that's the
those
thing.
are aging. That's the only thing that don't know that would change in the master plan or in the rate study, other than to identify the requirement to replace them. I think that certainly would come out of the study if we don't have a funding source for it already
Well, I thought there
identified.
was some talk about the puck and the software and usage and upgrading that
Correct.
to be able to track hourly how much usage I have at my
Correct.
residence. And
Yeah, that's what this expenditure would do. It would allow us to do that and to implement those as they age. And remember, we have some time frame for spending the money. This would not necessarily be something we do right away, but the
Yeah,
timeframes.
we were looking at that really as a project that we know is coming in the near future. Near may not be 1 year. But it would, we had the opportunity here using these funds to do that as opposed to rate revenues and things like that, to do that kind of project.
There are going to be a lot of things being done, and I think I could probably argue against a handful of them. I will say that the way that you've tweaked it, giving it for food, giving it for, basically granting, or paying off delinquent, allowing for businesses to apply and increasing that. I think the intent, helping, there's a lot of things that happened during COVID, and part of it was the shift of employment, which has impacted us negatively. So being able to give that to, I think the majority, probably 75%, there's nothing to argue. I think we're doing exactly what the intent is.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other, we could probably say, well, it's better to put it on a sidewalk or in a park or on a water meter. I think that stuff kind of comes into the city budget to do that. And so generally speaking, I think you guys have done a good job to tune this up to what the government, our parent government intended for it to use.
And really the only reason I mentioned that is I drive around and I start to think about my puck, and I go online and I try to access my own personal usage. And then I drive down Main Street and there's not a sidewalk on one side. And man, maybe we could spend some money on that, or something that would really serve the public a little bit better. Is what I see and think about as a citizen driving around and trying to think how we can help more people.
That we got like $1 million and
that's in my head. So
One thing we might do is just add that 500,000 into the infrastructure account.
I think that would be best. So
Would be
that way you have the
streets,
flexibility.
utilities, We have
yeah, and I just
flexibility
thought
to
we're
do that.
committed tonight to
That's
do
great.
that, and
That's
I'm a
great.
little
We could-
hesitant to do that this early.
All right, so
To clarify, that does meet the requirement, though. I mean, you're not asking us to spend money on anything that's not meeting the government requirement.
Correct.
But I will say it's harder for us on the general fund than it is on the water and sewer rate, which would pay for that. So anything that we can put in the general fund, I think gives the staff the most flexibility without impacting the taxpayer.
Sure.
That's good. We can do that.
That's an easy change to make.
So do you need a?
Yes, need a motion with that one change, please.
I would move that we approve the resolution with one change of moving $500,000 for water meters to add to the infrastructure of a little north of $1 million. So it'd be 1.5, whatever, 26, something. That's my motion.
Second, thank you for doing that.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Rogers, and thank you all for coming. I know you'd like to stay longer, but